welcome to Spotlight Series at the Silo. I'm Jennifer Bartram-Schmitt, and here with us today we have McAdory Lipscomb Jr. He is Vice President of TheatreWorks in New Milford. Welcome, Mac.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
It's a beautiful venue that you picked for these recordings.
It is
I love
a beautiful venue. Have you not been here before?
Not in this particular building, but I'd had a chance to be at the Silo itself before and found it an invigorating performance center, and it's great to be here.
It is. It also makes a very cool location for people out there looking for a good location in New Milford. A lot of interesting buildings here.
It's part of the uniqueness of the whole New Milford area, which I have in my life not seen what an accumulation of talent is within 3 miles this way, 4 miles that way, and it's one of the reasons that we love living here.
Yes, yes indeed. So you started your career in politics.
Correct. I was very early on involved in working on Capitol Hill while I was in college, and went on from that to a graduate school program, and then out of graduate school for credit, I actually went to work for President Jimmy Carter's media team and was involved in, as a 25-year-old, creating a whole marketing campaign that helped get him elected in 1976, and was creative director for the re-election in 1980. We lost, had to go find a new job, and I went to work for Showtime Networks and spent 15 years with them.
So what did you do at Showtime?
At Showtime, I spent the first half of my career in sales and distribution, as well as on-air performance. The way you launched cable systems in the very first half of that industry was weekend telethon. So I would produce, write, direct, and then star in a weekend telethon, say in Omaha or in Racine, Wisconsin, or in Ocala, Florida, where people would get a free version of the weekend for them to watch movies and realize they could pay us a monthly subscription and not have to worry about all that advertising. And so did on-air for about 4 years, also had all the large accounts as my sales and distribution side of my business. And then in 1989, I was called to New York to create a job called the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs, which oversaw all the publicity for all of our movies and comedy and all the Showtime programming, as well as our political operations in Washington, D.C., and did that for a little over 7 years. My last major accomplishment with Showtime was I was Executive Vice President of Showtime and ran the pay-per-view division. Oh. And in the pay-per-view division, we were the ones that actually put on all the very large Mike Tyson fights with Don King. And we delivered actually the first night out of, or the first big fight out of prison for Mike Tyson was the $100 million night we did for a fight that lasted for a minute and a half.
Oh, jeez, yes.
So had a lot of fun with that. So that was my Showtime career.
So were you actually at the fights? Did you get to attend all the fun events?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm wearing a jacket I would stand up and show you in the back room. We'll have a cutaway probably shortly for that, which is the actual jacket that was given to all of the executives at that particular fight.
Oh, that's a cool memento.
It's a lot of fun. When we actually put that deal together, I was working in Ohio, which is where Mike went to the day he got out of prison. And I had a $10 million check in my pocket to make sure that we signed that deal and that HBO did not get it. And so
you want them to swoop in and take it.
And they would have if they could have. But I made sure that I didn't leave until we had a signed contract. And we ended up with a 10-fight deal with Mike and Don as the promoter, and became the promoter of record for Mike Tyson's fights after he was let out of prison in Indiana.
That's amazing.
Had a great time.
I'll bet.
So the classic picture I have is I actually had torn my Achilles in a skiing accident, and I have this picture of Don King pushing me in a wheelchair at the Mirage in Las Vegas because we were going to go with the hair and everything, and I'm sitting there with a cast on my leg, and of course folks are going, well, that's Don King, but who's that in the wheelchair?
Yeah, that's got to be somebody.
That was a lot of fun. I thought I was going to bring that picture, but there were a couple of other things to talk about.
We'll have to look for that on the internet.
Yes,
You'll have to post it somewhere. That sounds like
it's a great one. I enjoy it.
Yeah. So you are not originally from this area.
I'm originally from Alabama.
Okay.
I was born in Columbus, Georgia, and grew up in a town called Auburn, which is the home of Auburn University. Mm-hmm. My family has actually owned the primary drugstore corner in that town since 1952, but my family itself has also been in and around Auburn since the 1840s.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a deep Southerner, but my accent used to be thick. And,
Oh, did
yes,
it?
used to be thick, but now it's not. But moved north in 1969 when I went to college at the University of Maryland.
And that's what brought you up this way?
Pretty much, I realized that the Northeast was probably going to be more beneficial to my career aspirations than being a real estate agent in Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah, you have a great speaking voice. Have you ever done radio?
I have done a little bit of radio, but mostly when I needed to fill in for somebody that didn't show up.
Oh, they just threw you in there again?
Yeah, well, here we need you to do this quick voiceover or do this acknowledgement that this is paid for by this particular candidate. And it somehow has resonated well, but I never generated much revenue off this voice other than a little bit here and there. When I was at the Showtime World, we had this thing called the Television Critics Tour, which most folks are not aware of it. It's pretty much gone out of existence. But
The Television Critics Store?
Tour.
Tour.
And what happens is the television networks, at the time, the Showtimes, the HBOs, the Discoveries, the television writers from all the different newspapers or television stations would actually go to Hollywood for 3 weeks. And they would go into a hotel, and then the studios as well as the networks would bring their stars in and spend a day talking about what was going to be their upcoming programming for the next 6 months, so that the writers would get some backstory information, a little Q&A here with one of the talents, and then would be able to put that in as color for their story when they were reviewing shows that may be premiering 2 or 3 months later.
That must have been an incredible event.
Oh, it was. It was. And intense, because if you stayed on time, it was a compliment to the writers, but most of the networks couldn't necessarily be sure they got their talent to show up on time. So we at Showtime put a methodology in place that made sure that if I said it was going to start at 7, we started at 7 and we finished at 8. And I made sure that we had the talent in the dressing room a half an hour before they're supposed to go on stage, that we had a management person that would be now called a showrunner that was managing that particular talent. And over 7 years, I only had one person that wouldn't leave the dressing room until Paramount brought her a check for $5,000 so that she would go out and be interviewed.
And who
Short
was
of
that
that,
difficult
we
person?
never-
Do we name that difficult person?
Well, I'm
on
not
camera?
going to. It's not relevant because
Right.
after that, we've kind of lost sight that she ever appeared in anything else again. So
Oh,
that's okay.
coincidence.
Funny thing about that.
Yeah,
Studio guys have long memories.
yeah, I guess so.
It's a lot of fun. That point in my life, I actually was very involved in the political world also. We were very instrumental in defining, because of political reasons, television rating system, actually. We created in 1992 and 1993, I was actually awarded a Vanguard Award for Public Relations. It was the first ever given by the cable industry.
Oh,
I brought the little V here.
very nice.
What I was able to do was organize 47 cable television networks to deal with what was known as the V channel. And the V chip was something that Congress was trying to legislate and put into televisions in order for parents to regulate what was going to be the violence that was coming through cartoons, coming through movies, all the things that were done that would allow parents to get in the way. Actually, we've actually seen the evolution of it to Facebook's introduction last week of the below 16 parent methodology they are now, putting in their system. Out of that, we actually created something called Voices Against Violence. We were able to neutralize a federal legislation. From that, we created the largest content study in the history of cable and also content around TV and the studios with more than a $2 million content assessment about violence in the media. We also, out of that, committed from a cable point of view, not a broadcaster point of view, but from a cable point of view, that we would rate our shows so that parents would be able to determine what they wanted to see or not see. So all the television rating systems that you see on television shows now, TV, the V for Violence, TV 14, all of that was an outcome of the coalition that I led to keep us from being federally legislated. So very lucky. My wife and children now, whenever that thing comes up and we're going to watch a movie, they go, "Oh, Daddy did that, Daddy did that." And so it's fair. And then I'm sure that you may have seen at the beginning of a movie where it says, "This movie has been altered for content and to time.
Yeah.
That actually is a paragraph that we created during the same time because the Directors Guild of America stepped up and said, when you edit a movie to fit television's timeline, that's no longer my movie. And we want federal legislation to say that's no longer my movie.
Fair
In
enough.
the process, we actually negotiated with the Directors Guild and got them to agree to that particular language. And I was the last person to sign off on it before it became standard for television delivery of movies and other things that have been altered to fit the time schedule.
Historical.
Right time, right place, just enough political background to understand what I needed to do from a lobbying point of view, and a recognition that we as an industry, in the cable industry at that time, and the cable television programmers, had a shared interest in agreeing we'd put a rating system in place if the broadcasters would, and the broadcasters refused. And we won a major political battle in Washington over the broadcasters as a cable consortium.
So you've brought some goodies here for us.
I did. There have been several points of recognition. The V-Chip, and that program that the cable industry gave me, which was the Vanguard Award, first ever presented in the cable television industry.
It's amazing.
Next to that, I actually was on the board at the University of Maryland, and I helped the BSOS school, which is Behavioral and Social Sciences, reposition itself so that everyone, whether it was African American Studies, whether it was geology, we actually redefined each one of those colleges in the university as a B Civic was government affairs, B Historic was African American Studies. So I brought the B, which became a branding scenario. A little bit about theater. I was in the theater business between campaigns when we talked about earlier. Opened a Warner Theater in Washington, D.C., and the Fox Theater in Atlanta for national touring companies. And it's one of the reasons that I really love the live performance, whether it was live politicians or live folks on stage.
Or live boxing matches.
And live boxing matches, because our Mike Tyson fight was the first $100 million event, singular event ever done in the history, which was a paid event. Now, the Super Bowl might generate more than that, but not as a pay-per-view event, which is what I mentioned earlier as my association in the boxing world and running Showtime pay-per-view. After pay-per-view, I went on and did a few things in the developing world around Accenture, which is a large consulting firm around the world. I did that. At Accenture, we actually built the platform that was called Vongo, and Vongo was then sold to a company called Netflix so they could stream television.
I think I've
You've heard of them, right?
That
yeah.
one.
So that platform was actually sold in by me to the president of Vongo, and then Vongo sold it because they had the exclusive rights, digital rights for distribution over the internet of all the Disney output. And they were the only people that had enough vision and foresight to put that in their contracts, which gave them the ability to be able to start the first streaming service over the internet in like 2005, 2006. They then sold that platform. Fast forward, I retired from Accenture and moved to New Milford. And in New Milford, I discovered a theater that was just straight out of central casting.
Now, was it called the Little Theater back then?
At one point, it was called the Little Theater. In fact, we are, I believe, the fourth oldest community theater in the state of Connecticut, formed in 1962. And it evolved to a point where we became, I believe, in 1974, rebranded as TheatreWorks New Milford. And TheatreWorks is unique in that a sense that we are in a building that was actually the first black church in New Milford, built in 1901. And it was converted to our theater in 72. And we have theater seating with both not a bad seat in the house, a little over 110 seats. We also have a stage. We've built it so that the stage is actually at eye level for most everyone except the very front row. And we've been performing there for quite a few years. TheatreWorks this year, I joined the board as the vice president of TheatreWorks, which you kindly introduced me earlier. And my role there is one, of course, to advise the president, Gail Alexander, and the rest of the board on a number of things about moving our community theater to a slightly more professional venue. My work at both the Warner Theater in Washington, D.C. and the Fox Theater in Atlanta helps me have a perspective on what it takes to have a really good quality theater. And TheatreWorks itself, for many, many years, is considered one of the places that if you are an aspiring live onstage performer, actress, actor, whatever, it is one of the venues you want to play going forward. TheatreWorks itself is located in an interesting place. We are behind a 1931 old high school building in New Milford called the East Street School. Mm-hmm. We share a parking lot with them. And one of the things that I've been initiating is the creation of what we will call the New Milford Arts Complex. We are advocating that the city convert that old high school into a theater performance as well as artist studio, potentially even artist apartments.
Is there anything in there right now?
Absolutely nothing in there right now. In 2022, the school board had been in there and they moved to another venue in town. And so that venue, the school, is sitting there trying to understand what it should do. There are several unique things about it. First of all,
looking out across the parking lot at all the hubbub happening at the theater.
Exactly. Well, we have some murals that were actually painted during the Depression on the walls in there that are hand-painted murals that are classics. There are so few of those from the WPA that still exist, and we still have them on the walls. We also have a stained glass that was developed by an English gentleman that moved to Kent, Connecticut, who is famous for several hundred stained glass windows in churches all over the United States. And we are still trying to ascertain, but we believe one of his is also in the National Cathedral in Washington. We've also determined that that 1931 high school building was built by a firm from Danbury, that we have been able to triangulate and learn that more than likely that same building organization built Mark Twain's home in Reading, Connecticut. So when we add all of those things together, the venue being right at Route 7, 202, as you go up there, and we have so much talent in the Litchfield County area that we believe that as an arts complex, it can be a center for creating what we would like to call the arts corner of Connecticut, which is the northwest corner of Connecticut. We can let the other part of the state be the quiet corner, but we want to be the arts corner. And we believe the restoration of the school and the renovation of the TheatreWorks, consistent with keeping that parking lot and making that whole area an arts-oriented facility, is exactly what we'd like to accomplish.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So what is the process to get something like that done? You being in politics, I'm sure you know exactly what to do.
Well, I wouldn't say exactly, but let's say it's directionally correct. First of all, we have been communicating with the Commission on the Arts, of which I am a member. We are also working with the Economic Development Commission, where we have actually taken members of the New Milford Commission and showed them facilities in Bridgeport. We showed them folks in also where we have upstate in Connecticut, in Winthrop, another converted old factory. We've shown them also Great Barrington in Massachusetts has used arts as a very refurbishing kind of excitement center, and we're trying to create that same corridor here. I've worked with the mayor in communicating with him. There is something called an RFP, which is a request for proposal that's supposed to be going out shortly. And in that request, they are not only looking at the East Street School, but also the Pettibone High School as to what we can do as far as develop both of those properties. Our goal is to develop East Street, as I said, into a regional arts complex. And working with the mayor, now recognizing that the state is actually involved with grants and going after those. There are federal grants. We have an architect that's working with us now. So we are actually trying to align all the things necessary to properly respond to the RFP, the request for proposal, so that as a 501c3, which we are a not-for-profit organization, we could manage both properties and bring a much more rich and robust arts center to New Milford.
Well, that sounds wonderful. That would be fantastic.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
Good luck with that.
We have in the TheatreWorks world not only 5 or 6 shows that we do as our main stage, but we also work with more than 100 kids every year on developing their stage skills. Their after-school programs. In fact, we're running one now that just started this particular weekend called Spamalot, and it's the youth program, and we have about 20 students that come out of the high school, come out of the junior high, and they learn stage presence. They learn singing with a group. They also learn how to perform that show. We do that after school 2 days a week and on Saturday mornings, and then they learn all the way through the fall and then have a major show of Spamalot Junior in January. So between the youth programs, our main stage programs, and then also our theater writer workshops, where we've actually developed, in this summer, we had a company, or a show called Oat Squares, which was developed out of our theater writers group from very first page all the way through being on stage.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it's actually being now also performed up on Cape Cod
Oh.
here in the fall. So it's gone from first page all the way through our performances of it to now going out to additional theaters around here.
Oh, that's
so
wonderful.
Lots going on. TheatreWorks is very exciting. It's one of the reasons that I'm loving living in New Milford.
Sounds great. So what else is happening with TheatreWorks? Are you doing Jesus Christ Superstar
We
coming
are.
up?
Actually, I brought a poster that shows Jesus Christ Superstar. We are at the very beginning of October. We actually have only 8 or 6 performances of a show called Good Wives and the Gallows. And it is on sale now online, TheatreWorks.us.
TheatreWorks.us.
TheatreWorks.us, exactly. And what it tells is the story of the Connecticut witch trials, which were 30 or 35 or so years before the Salem witch trials. And it talks about the 40...
That long
that
before? Wow.
And it's been researched, and the primary director, producer, writer, and performer is a woman by the name of Victoria Wolf. And she is bringing that play along with another woman to talk about what it's like for the last 2 women that were actually being hung as witches in Connecticut before the Salem witch trials. It's been heavily researched with, turns out that the transcripts for the trial, the actual dating of the trial, all of that was still in an archives that had not burned down like many of our libraries, whatever. And so she was able to construct this play out of actual material that comes directly from that time when we were ahead of our time in Connecticut, as usual, just on the witch trials.
In a bad way.
That's exactly.
Wow.
Then in December, we are going to have a professional level performance of Jesus Christ Superstar. And that'll run through most of December, and then we'll close on December the 28th. Those tickets are also available now to be purchased. We end up with 2 very interesting Thursday night programs. We actually specialized for our more senior citizens and make both of those performances available to them at no charge. They generally are sold out.
That's wonderful.
And our Saturday, Sunday, and then Sunday matinees, other performances are tickets online at TheatreWorks.us. I'm going to plug it as many times as I can.
TheatreWorks.us.
TheatreWorks.us. And that's it, where you can find Jesus Christ Superstar in December and Good Wives and the Gallows in October. And then also do a little bit of history about our theater, as well as some of the photographs and things that we've done about the things we've produced over the last 40 years. And our youth programs that are actually taken and developed for kids so that they end up having a level of confidence that the stage and live performance will help. And I go back to my live performance life, which is live performance on stage or live performance for politicians or live performance for my pay-per-view are the things that just invigorate me.
I can see why. And you're very lively in interviews, so.
Thank you.
Live interviews, also good.
I just a little fellow from Lee County, Alabama, doing the best I can.
No, you've been great. Thank you so much for your time.
And
it's been wonderful to have you here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you.